Devil Worship: The Sacred Books and Traditions of the Yezidis by Isya Joseph, 1919. Chapter 2: The Essential Elements in Yezidism. Although comparatively few in number, ignorant and practically without literature of any sort, the followers of Yezid are not without definitely formulated doctrines of faith, which bind them together as a sect and distinguish them from every other religious body. They cherish two fundamental beliefs. They believe in a deity of the first degree, God, and a deity of the second degree, whom they seem to think is composed of three persons in one: Malaktaus, Sheikh Adi, and Yezid. And there's going to be some variations with some of these things, but the Yazidi view of God. It is not easy to discover whether the concept of God which exists today among the Yazidis, however shadowy, has come from Islamic or Christian sources, or whether it comes from that primitive stage where the worship of God and of inferior entities exist side by side. One thing, however, is apparent. The worship of God and infernal entities, that might be more respectful way to address what's meant by that. One thing, however, is apparent, that the Yazidi notion of God does not seem to be influenced by any positive religion which traces its teachings of a great religious founder who spoke as the organ of divine revelation and deliberately parted from the traditional religion. The Yazidis' idea of God is rather an image left on their mind than the result of any reflection. Hence, simple as it is, this conception is not so easy to define. The notion so prominent in Greek philosophy of God as an existence absolute and complete in himself, unchangeable, outside of time and space, etc., is unknown in Yazidi theology. So is the theocratic conception of Yahweh in Judaism is foreign to the dogma of this sect. Not even the Islamic idea of God as an absolute ruler, and the distinctive notion which the Christians have of God as Christ-like in character, are to be found in the religion of the devil worshippers. We have accustomed ourselves to think of the Supreme Being in these conventional terms. There is one element, however, which may be traced to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, namely the belief in a personal God. Yeah. If you're going to say that things started with Muhammad or any of the Israelites or something when it came to being able to personally connect to what you worship, that's quite the view to claim for oneself. This guy's obviously a Christian. But Yezidism holds that this entity is the only creator of the universe and is not its sustainer. So sort of a deist sort of view. Its maintenance, according to this system, is left to the seven. Another element, which may be said to be a remnant of some other religions, is the idea of a transcendent God. But in this point, as in the other, the notion of transcendentalism in the religion of the devil worshippers is not of the same degree as that of other religions. The former conceives of the Almighty as retiring far away, as having nothing to do with the affairs of this world except once a year, on New Year's Day, when he sits on his throne and calls the entities to him and delivers the power into the hands of the entity who is to descend to the earth. To sum up, the Yezidis' conception of a personal God is transcendental and static of the extreme type. In this, it resembles somewhat the Platonic idea of the absolute. They call God in the Kurdish Kuda, and believe that he manifested himself in 3 different forms: in the form of a bird, Malaktaus, in the form of an old man, Sheikh Adi, and in the form of a young man, Yazid. They do not seem to offer him a direct prayer or sacrifice. The deity of the 2nd degree, Malaktaus, and there are myths that, 1, point out the lying to outsiders bit, and 2, that which points out that they consider Malaktaus to be the real God, and there isn't another creator that kind of presented like a demiurge that thinks it's the creator, but it's really not. So, anyways, a distinguished modern scholar argues that Taus is Tammuz. His argument is that the word Taus must embody an ancient entity, but owing to the obscurity in which the origin of Yezidism and the being of Malaktaus are wrapped, it's difficult to say which is meant, and to determine this, he assumes that the term does not come from the Arabic word Taus, but was occasioned by some folk etymology, and that we must look, therefore, for some name which resembles Taus. Taking this as a starting point, the critic calls attention to the fact that in Fihrist, which treats of the feasts and entities of the Haranians, we read that Taus had a feast in the middle of Tammuz. He infers from that Taus is identical with Malaktaus, and to the question of who this Taus is, he answers it is Tammuz. To justify his explanation, the writer contends that the Yezidis speak in Kurdish, and according to Justice Grammatique, the change of meme to wow in this language is frequent. However plausible this process seems to be, philologically it cannot here yield a satisfactory conclusion, for it is based on wrong premises. It is not true that the word Taus signifies an ancient entity. It denotes the devil and nothing else. Well, there are certain cults of entities with certain features that we would call devils, right? This is so clear that the Yezidis are to anyone acquainted with the religion as to leave no need for further discussion, and to question the religious consciousness of a sect is to engage in pure speculation. Likewise, the method of determining this entity by name of some other entity resembling is objectionable. There are many such names. One might also infer that the sect worship Christ under the form of the devil. There is Christian Satanism up by Baltimore, I think it is. Baltimore and St. Louis, somewhere around there. There's I used to communicate with this guy who ran a Christian Satanism group. His Facebook group's disappeared, I think, so I don't... This theory has actually been advanced. Théâtre de la Turque. The statement that, in Kurdish, the letter meme is changed to wow frequently is untenable. If one would set it up as a grammatical rule to explain such phenomena, what is more, the Kurds pronounce the same name Tammuz and nothing else, unless someone has a physiological difficulty which will not permit him to close his lips. So that instead of saying Tammuz, he would mutter Ta'uz. The following are a few of many such instances to show that meme is not changed to wow in Kurdish, even in words of Arabic origin. Ameli, Saleh, good works, Zamani, Akarat, the last day, the well of Zamsam, Muhammad, and Mustafa, the chosen one, when applied to the prophet Melech, king, when applied to Ta'us. Further, the assumption that Ta'us does not come from the Arabic Ta'us is unverifiable. Unquestionably, the attempt to trace this term to Tauz, then to Tammuz, was suggested by Professor Lidzbarski by the fact that Amuz was the name of an ancient Babylonian entity, and that Abu Zayd Wahb ibn Ibrahim, quoted by An-Nadim, an Arab author of the 10th century, says that Ta'uz has a feast in his honor on the 15th of Tammuz, but according to the author of Die Sabir und Sabismus, the original form of this word is unknown. See, there we have more of a connection, don't we? Not only the inference which identifies Ta'us with Tammuz is based on wrong premises, but in the Yezidi conception of Melech Ta'us, there are no traces of notion which is held respecting Tammuz. The latter was originally a sun entity, and son of Ea, and Sirdu, and the bridegroom of Ishtar. We're starting to see some of the connections, if you know what I mean. Legendary poems of Babylonia described him as a shepherd, cut off in the beauty of youth, are slain by the boar's tusk in winter, and mourned for long and vainly by Ishtar. Tammuz made his way to Canaan, Cyprus, and thence to Greece. He had ceased to be the young and beautiful sun entity, and had become the representative of the vegetation of spring growing by the side of the canals of Babylonia, but parched and destroyed by the fierce heat of the summer. Hence in Babylonia his funeral festival came to be observed in the month of June, and Palestine 2 months later. Tammuz had changed his character in passing from country to country, but the idea of him as a slain entity, and of his festival as the idealization of human sorrow, a kind of All Souls' Day, was never altered wherever he was adored. Such beliefs are not found in the Yazidi view of their king peacock. On the contrary, his festival is for them the occasion of joy and pleasure. We already know that there's a wide variety of Yazidi beliefs and practices and cults implied by certain beliefs. I conclude then that Ta'us is the Arabic word meaning peacock, just as Melech is the Arabic word meaning king or angel. The sect write it, pronounce it, and believe it to be so. The faith of the sect finds expression in the fact that they represent their angel, Azazel, in the form of the peacock. It seems to me that the real question is not what Melech Ta'us is, but how the devil came to be symbolized by the image of a bird. We can trace this back more than 18,000 years ago? Where? I'll just say something Syria, Turkey, there were these figurines. Where else were they? But there's some older stuff too. But anyways, this question, I can't remember the names of any sites at the moment. I may get to those books, by the way, but show you on the channel. Some of the stuff's old enough to show. This question finds an answer in the fact that the worship of a bird seems to have been the most ancient of idolatry. It's condemned especially in Deuteronomy 4, 16 and 17. Lest ye corrupt your souls and make a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness of any winged fowl that flieth in the air. And Layard in his Nineveh and its Remains, Volume 2, page 462, gives a sketch of a bird from one of the slabs dug up at Nimrud. He remarks that the Yugas are sacred birds belonging to the Babylonian and probably also the Assyrian religion. They were a kind of demon who exercised a peculiar influence over mankind, resembling the Pharaoh of Zoroastrianism. The oracles attributed to Zoroaster describe them as powers anointed by God. Now, among the Shayateen Min al Jinn, there are entities that play similar roles as could be said about guardian angels, that sort of thing. Or, angels that are attracted to good people and stay around them, or whatever you call the Fravashis. Their images, made of gold, were the palace of the king of Babylon. According to Philostratus, they were connected with magic. Well, every spiritual thing is magic, really, if we don't use the word as hate speech. In Palestine, the dove was sacred for the Phoenicians and Philistines. The Jews brought accusation against the Samaritans that they were worshippers of the dove. Sacred doves were found also at Mecca. Nasar, eagle, was worshipped by the tribe of Hamyar. Surah 71 mentions a list of the old ones that were worshipped, but only 5 are mentioned there, which actually ties to the Gujarati myth, but that goes back to a myth about the 7, so are the 7 under the 1. A question suggesting itself is how the Yazidi entity came to be designated by the form of a peacock. There's a lot of stories about incarnations, and the peacock is what they supposedly base their calendar on. This bird is a native of Ceylon and not of Mesopotamia or Kurdistan, where the Yazidis live. The answer may be found in the Islamic tradition that when the first parents forfeited heaven for eating wheat, they were cast down upon the earth. Some stuff just exists among people who are called Muslim. It's not that it stems from any prophet necessarily, but I don't want to overstate that statement either. But for eating wheat, they were cast down upon the earth. Eve descended upon Arafat, Adam at Ceylon, the peacock at Gabul, and Satan at Bilbais. In this myth, the devil and the peacock are figured as sharing the same penalty at the same time. According to Surah 2, ayat 28 through 31, the crime of the former was pride, but nothing is said about the guilt of the latter. No, it doesn't say that the peacock. And anyways, we learn from other sources that the bird in question is thought of as a symbol of pride. In his article, Peacock, in the Encyclopedia Britannica, Professor A. Newton says the bird is well known as the proverbial personification of pride. It is seldom kept in large numbers, for it has a bad reputation of doing mischief in gardens. I think they're pretty cool in gardens. I don't know what these people are talking about. Hence, we may infer that the notion of the peacock as a symbol of pride, together with the Quranic idea of Satan's sin, led to the formation of the myth. That this story was current among the followers of Yazid bin Unaysa, and that, under the influence of the devil worshippers of Persia, the old tradition lost its original significance and came to be understood to represent the peacock as a symbol of the devil. Among the three branches in the second degree, Malik Ta'us holds an important place in the theology of the Yazidis. The language used in his praise is so elevated that one is led to think that he is identical with God. Some scholars deny this theory on the ground that the principal prayer of these people is directed to God, and no mention is made of King Peacock. Well, they have other forms that they refer to. The dog with the black dog with white spots. The snake, same color scheme, by its eyes. Hence, they contend also that no direct worship is offered to the latter entity. It seems to me that such a connection is not justifiable. In the first place, the people themselves confess their loyalty to the chief angels. Moreover, the expression in this prayer, "Thou hast neither feather, nor wings, nor arms, nor voice," is more applicable to the symbol of the peacock than to God. There can be no doubt, I think, that in the conception of the sect, Azazel appears to be identical with God. This fact finds definite expression in the book of Jilwa. In chapter 1, he is represented as being from eternity to eternity, as having absolute control of the world, as being omnipresent and omnipotent and unchangeable. In chapter 2, he is said to appear in diverse manners to the faithful ones. See, not just a peacock, so the forms are not quite, Shaitan, as the Avestan term calls them, the cast out of the place, and life and death are determined by him. And in chapter 3, he is declared to be the source of revelation. While this is true, there are other phrases which refer to Ta'us as being inferior to the great God, but superior to all others. He was created and is under the command of God, but he's made the chief of all. So, a semi-deist sort of way of looking at things. It is not quite easy to understand the underlying idea of worshipping the devil. Some explain this by supposing he is so bad that he requires constant propitiation, otherwise he will take revenge and cause great misery. For this reason it is claimed they do not worship God, because he is so good that he cannot but forgive. This is the usual interpretation, and it is confirmed by the nature of the religious service rendered. It seems to partake much more of a proprietary than of Eucharistic character, not as the natural expression of love, but of fear. This reminds us at once of the Babylonian religion. According to this religion, When any misfortune overtook the worshippers, they regarded it as a sign that it was angry, and had therefore left them to their own resources, or had become their enemy. To be thus deserted was accounted a calamity, because of the innumerable dangers to which the soul was exposed from the action of the powers seen and unseen, so that as a matter of precaution it was well to maintain a propitiatory attitude. Hence the great object of worship was to secure and retain the somewhat capricious favor of the entity. This is in accord with the natural feeling of man in its primitive state, which leads him rather to dread punishment for his sin than to be thankful for blessings received. Others hold that the devil worshippers believed that their Lord is a fallen angel. Angel means different things, so there's different classes of things. So we're talking about a jinn, obviously, now suffering a temporary punishment for his rebellion against the divine will because he deceived Adam, or because he did not recognize the superiority of Adam as commanded by God. Some people say that's implied, but not obeying the command in itself could have been, it, if the mythology is, they're interpreting the myth largely with that, but it's not for man to interfere in the relations of God with his angels, whether they be fallen or not. On the contrary, man's duty is to venerate them all alike. The great God will be finally reconciled to Taus, and will restore him to his high place in the celestial hierarchy. Still others assert that the sect does not believe in an evil spirit, but as a true divinity. The theory is not generally accepted. Well, this theory is not accepted by Christians who kind of don't want to think that, maybe their idea is a false trinity, and maybe some other, that anybody would even think that. No. Obviously. But seems more probable than preceding ones, for there is nothing in the sacred book to indicate that Malak Taus is an evil spirit or a fallen angel. On the contrary, the charge that he was rejected and driven from heaven is repudiated. The mentioning of his name is looked upon as an insult to and blaspheming against him, because it is based, the Yezidis think, on the assumption that he is degraded. Finally, he is declared to be one of the seven, who is now ruling the world for a period of 10,000 years. And, say, calling him Shaitan, meaning cast out of a place in the Vestin, they don't like, because they're saying he's It is interesting to note that in the history of religion, the god of one people, the so-called god of one people, and the so-called devil of another, in the Vesta, the evil spirits are called Dava, Persian Div. The Aryans of India, in common with the Romans, Celts, and Slavs, gave the name of Dev, Devin, Divine, Divni, to their good, or so-called godlike spirits. Asura is as well. There were asuras being worshipped, but we could say they're closer to the demon thing in the Rig Veda, and an evil spirit only in latter Brahman theology. Zoroaster thought the beings whom his opponents worshipped as gods under the name of Dava were really powers whom mankind unwittingly led, by whom mankind are unwittingly led to their destruction. In Islam, the male and female entities called gods are jinn. That's their word for those unseen male and female entities. Just as those of the Semitics are called Shirin, Sharim, the hairy demons. Okay, Seer, the Gothaya, entity number 70. I did at least one program on that. The hairy demons in Leviticus 17:7. The im with that meaning the plural, or as those of the entities of Greece and Rome became devils to the early Christians. The Yazidi veneration for the devil in their assemblies is paid to a symbol, the sanjak. It is the figure of a peacock with a swelling breast, diminutive head, and a widespread tail. The body is full, but the tail is flat and fluted. This figure is fixed on top of a candlestick around which 2 lamps are placed, one above the other, and containing 7 burners. The stand has a bag, and is taken to pieces when carried from place to place. Close by the stand they put water jugs filled with water, to be drunk as a charm by the sick and afflicted. They set the sanjak at the end of the room, and cover it with a cloth. Underneath is a plate to receive the contributions. The qawwal, sacred musician, kisses the corner of the cloth when he uncovers Malik Ta'us. At a given signal, all arise, and then each approach the sanjak before it and puts its contribution into the plate. On returning to their places, they bow to the image several times and strike the breast as a token of their desire to perpetuate the evil principle. The Yazidis have 7 sanjaks, but the Farik, lieutenant general of the Kurdish army, who tried to convert them to Islam in 1892, took 5 of them. Some deny, however, that they were real ones. They say that they were imitations. Each sanjak is given a special place in the emir's palace, where it is furnished with a small brazen bed and a vessel in the form of a mortar placed before it. They burn candles and incense before it day and night. Each sanjak is assigned a special district, a name which is written on a piece of paper and placed on its shoulder. On the shoulder of the first district of Sheikh Khan, which compromises the villages around Mosul, is indicated on the second Jabar Sinjar. In the third district of Chalatiya, which is one of the dependencies of Diyarbakir. On the 4th, the district of Hawariya,